So let's jump into this story about the U.S. Army. So,
yeah, I know where you're going.
So, I mean, you may be an expert on the armed forces, having actually been in them. But we have the story from this is from Lad Bible. For some reason, I chose Lad Bible. U.S. Army could reverse gender-neutral fitness test as research finds women struggle. So, I've had family in. I actually come from a military family. Everyone but me basically was either married into or served. And I remember hearing stories from. I briefly lived just off of base housing in Fort Eustis. Is it Fort Eustis? Yeah,
Eustis, yeah, Virginia.
Newport News. Yeah. And I also briefly lived on Fort Carson in near Colorado Springs.
Oh, I know it very well.
Heard a lot of stories from people who had no problem bringing up men or women, that women have a different standard.
Now, first of all, you know that in the House of Representatives, you can't say men or women. They got rid of that language.
Yeah, that's Nancy Pelosi's rule. She got rid of gendered language.
What's the situation now? What do you say?
They, them.
You.
Yeah, you.
How is that woman still?
But anyway, we'll stay on the military thing. So I remember hearing stories from people who went through basic training, and they would say, the women would complain and be given special leeway and things like this. There were certain medical issues that women had to be granted special access to facilities that men didn't get, and so very much were given special treatment. Apparently, at some point, they wanted to do gender-neutral testing, and my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, they were saying that it used to be that women did well in women-specific testing, and that means they would get promotions. Once they implemented gender-neutral testing, where it was even for both males and females, the women were struggling to score well against the men and not getting the promotions, thus creating inequity.
Disparity, inequity.
Unequal outcome.
Yeah.
See, women had the equal opportunity to compete in the same tests.
Yeah.
But because the standard was standard, the men just tended to do better on physical tests, meaning the women weren't getting the promotions. So now they're apparently going to reverse this. You told me that you had stories, you knew people. I don't know what your thoughts on this would be.
Well, let me put it in this context. Why do we have men's downhill skiing and women's downhill skiing? Pretty innocuous thing. I mean, why don't we just have men and women competing in downhill skiing? Why do you have
something for some reason men can spin faster, jump higher?
Yeah, you have men's figure skating and women's. Why do you have men's hockey and women's hockey? Men's basketball,
men weigh more.
Bone density,
all
the
those
shape of the hips.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So why is it that when it comes to your national security that you want to say that there's no difference?
I don't get it.
Okay,
we are in serious trouble when it comes to this. Listen. Yeah. I am absolutely all for trans rights and LGBTQ rights and the respect of the individual and equality under the law. But we have to be real.
But let me tell you something, Tim. In the United States military, I could put a guy out for being overweight. You cannot join the military if you have flat feet.
Yep.
So now all of a sudden we're going to say, and this is what the American Psychiatric Association calls it, gender dysphoria, a mental condition. So now we're saying that the United States military has to accept people with a mental condition and then provide them hormonal therapies at the taxpayer expense. What does that have to do with our national security? That's another one of these feel-good things. While, as you just talked about, the Chinese Communist Party, they're building their army, they're growing their hegemonic dominance, they're expanding their navy, and we're over here saying, why can't we be fair and have more equity and let everybody play in the sandbox?
I have tremendous respect for everybody who serves or wants to serve, but I think that someone who's overweight could find a role for them that's a net positive for us. They don't have to be in combat. They don't have to be in maybe one of these standard positions that require the physical fitness. But I certainly think trans people as well as overweight people we could absolutely find them to be a net positive for our armed forces.
But now you're telling me that the United States military has to accept someone with a condition, a mental condition determined by the American Psychiatric Association, which means they're going to have to provide counseling. They're going to have to provide hormonal therapies and all of this type of stuff at the taxpayer expense. I don't think that's what the military is in existence for. The United States military is a volunteer organization. We have to have standards. We have to have rules. We have to have, guidelines, because we are not looking at being everybody come and join and play. That's not what the United States military is as a voluntary organization. Now, if it was a draft organization, that'd be something different. If it was an organization where we had obligatory service, then that's something different. But let me just put it in these terms. I'm 60 years of age. I'm 5'9". I'm about 206 pounds. This morning I got up and I knocked out 3.5 miles, did my, push-ups and crunches and everything. If you put me in a ring with Ronda Rousey or any, mixed martial arts, yeah, they probably could get in that kick on me because, I'm 60, maybe I'm a little slow. But if I get one punch to their head, what's going to happen?
I defer to Joe Rogan on this one. And, he talked about this quite a bit. They got mad at him for it, but he pointed out that men have bigger hands, stronger grip, bigger joints, and striking power.
It's my bone density. It's all of those things and projecting power.
Muscle twitch, fiber.
I think there is an issue if we are displacing strong, able-bodied individuals with people who are not fit to serve for a variety of reasons. But I also think that, in my personal opinion, I look at, say, like a trans man, someone who's born female, is on, therapy and is now a, trans man. I think there's a net positive to anybody who's willing to serve this country, and we can find a way to make that work. Now, that being said, I also understand biological differences between male and female, and I think there are reasons why we tend not to have women in combat roles, though I think now we do this is right in
that came because of the Obama administration. Once again, it's about the social engineering of our military. Let me tell you something. A bullet doesn't know male or female. There's no doubt about it. But the one thing that my number one standing order when I was a battalion commander and we ended up going to Iraq in 2003, my number one standing order was keep your bayonet sharp. And why did I say keep your bayonet sharp? Because you never know when you're going to have to go into close quarter combat with the enemy.
That's right.
I got a question along those lines. As a leader, as a commander in the military, now, if a woman were to be in a commander role, do you think you need the biggest, baddest dude, like the tough, strong men to be commanders, or could you get small female commanders that would be as good or better than men? Do you think there's...
Well, I will tell you that there is an example of leadership that without a doubt is necessary. If you're going to be a commander of combat troops, you got to kind of look like a combat troop. And let me put it in this perspective. If I walked in here with you all today and I said that I'm a retired Army lieutenant colonel, and I had, I'm not picking at you, but I had hair like yours, Ian.
No,
you see, but if I had hair like yours, Ian, and if I had a little pooch belly and everything like that, when you kind of look and say, scratch your head, say, man, he don't look like a be honest.
Well, I'll just make a point.
Now, I'll be honest. Would you say in the back of your head, man, he don't? You see,
he's
Lydia
definitely retired.
Well, so you remember? You see what just happened with Tucker Carlson and that Marine?
I know exactly what just happened.
He got accused of being overweight, out of shape.
And again, I don't think that we should have the United States military senior officers and senior enlisted men attacking a news personality.
Yeah. I agree.
See, that goes against, we're supposed to be protecting freedom of speech.
Let me say something in regards to like this Army testing and stuff. I've been skateboarding my whole life. I'm sorry, but I actually worked with some individuals who are part of an organization. I'll leave their name out. I don't want anyone to get dragged, but I had a good friend who was one of the best female skateboarders in the world at a certain time period. I went to the X Games, VIP access, and we got to hang out. She was a really good friend of mine growing up. And I got to listen to a top female pro tell these young women they will never be as good as the men. I actually took issue with that back then, saying like, if you may believe that, but don't discourage people. Tell them to strive to be the best and to view that as competition to be better. But when you look at, you mentioned skiing, I'm thinking skateboarding. There's no question. You watch men's, X Games skateboarding, and you'll notice a very obvious difference between the male and the female skateboarding. But actually, I actually took some basic first aid training. I've actually done hostile environment training, so I got a bit more extensive. And when I was younger and trying to learn some of the basics of first aid, because I skated all the time, and my mom was like, it's important, you should learn some stuff, Google it, and I did. I learned some things about sports. Women are more likely to suffer knee and ankle injuries skateboarding than men.
Yeah.
Because of something called the Q angle, which is the wide hips of females means that their femurs are at a wider angle than men's, which means they're more prone to joint injury than a man is.
And the same thing in the military, when you start talking about going for a 12-mile ruck march and you've got 60 pounds on your back, and really in combat you're carrying a whole lot more. But you see the sustainment of those injuries because there is a physiological difference. Now, coming back to what your question said, Ian, I want the best possible person to be out there as a leader. But the thing is that you've got to be able to lead and accomplish the exact same task that you're asking your troops to be able to do. When I was in combat, I was right up there hooking and jabbing with my guys. If there was a X percentage of my unit that was dedicated to a combat operation, I was out there. Okay? And so that's the thing that has to happen. You know, combat is not about social engineering. Combat is not about equity. Combat is about you against another person and killing that person. That's what war is. War is hell. That's what William Tecumseh Sherman said. And as a matter of fact, it was Nathan Bedford Forrest, and hopefully no one gets upset because I'm quoting a Confederate general. But Nathan Bedford Forrest war is about fighting, and fighting is about killing. That's the bottom line. It's not a computer game where you're sitting back and you got a bunch of drones or whatever. The bottom line is someone has to be on the ground and point something at somebody else and eliminate them. Now, and that's what we need to be thinking about, because that's what the national security of the United States of America is all about.
Now, I'll say something that will probably offend a lot of the left, where I'm actually trying to make a point in favor of women in the military, is that there's that saying, we heard it recently, was it soldiers march on their bellies? Something to that effect?
Yeah.
That you need to keep a military well-regulated in terms of their equipment, not in terms of law. You need to keep them well-fed and like a well-oiled machine. When Tucker Carlson made these comments about, flight suits for pregnant women, I disagree with him. I think that, a lot of these jobs, and this was explained to me by a lot of people, there's a lot of logistics, there's a lot of administrative work.
Hey, look, I can't fly a fighter jet, and there are female fighter pilots. I can't fly a helicopter, and there are a lot of female attack helicopter pilots. I was just a dumb old paratrooper that jumped out of airplanes, and I was an artillery officer. And what I am saying is that, yes, there are positions and duties out there that people can serve in, but there are still standards that say your body and your physiology will only allow you to do X. And so if we want to start having women as Navy SEALs, if we want to have women as Green Beret, just pass the same doggone test that everybody else is.
Absolutely.
Don't have what we have seen, where all of a sudden there's a altering of rules, there's adding of more chances and opportunities to get out there and try to accomplish something, because a lot of the guys don't get that.
I want to give you my thoughts on the transgenders serving the military issue. You mentioned that the DSM-5, I think, says it's a mental condition, and that's actually been staunchly advocated for by many trans individuals because it grants them access to medication. But I digress. There's a lot of people who say you have diabetes. Legitimate question is, would diabetes prohibit you from enlisting or serving?
Absolutely.
It would, yeah.
Epilepsy, all these things. Yeah. I mean, heart murmurs, sleep apnea. I had one of my captains in Iraq,
But is that just combat? Could you run an administrative role? Could you drive a vehicle?
No, but maybe. But again, what are you doing? You're creating two separate classes.
Let's be fair though.
You can't.
The Navy SEALs are the best of the best of the best.
But you cannot. Yeah, but you cannot create two separate classes where we say, okay, you can go be in the fat boy unit.
Yeah.
Well, see, no, I'm serious. You laugh, but let me tell you how brutal it is in the United States military. Well, the military I grew up in. You the fat boy that falls out of run. Oh man, you gonna hear it.
But you become the ripped boy soon, don't you?
You better.
Yeah.
If you want to stay in.
Yeah.
So what happened with the captain?
I'm sorry. They'll throw.
What happened with the captain with sleep apnea?
Yeah. So if you enlist and you're overweight, and
if you enlist, okay, you're going to have to meet height weight standards before you can ship out to basic training.
Interesting.
And even when you go to basic training, you're still going to be monitored, and you still have to make those height and weight standards. Okay. And again, on active duty, you got to continue to have your height and weight tests and your body fat examination. If you don't make it, then you go. I don't care what level that you rise to. Now, what happened to the captain in Iraq? I had to send him back home.
Oh, geez.
Out of the combat
sleep
zone.
apnea.
Was it like
sleep apnea? And you don't know how hurtful it was for me as his battalion commander to look at this kid who had tears in his eyes, begging me not to send him back, telling me that he'll make it through, even though he can't get sleep and everything. But I was seeing,
was he overweight?
No, he wasn't overweight, but he had sleep apnea, and I was seeing how it was affecting his duties because he couldn't get sleep.
Mess you up.
Yeah, that's true.
And I couldn't have him go out there, and the next thing you know, he's a detriment not just to himself, but to someone else. And I had to tell him, I got to send you back home.
So you need the best of the best of the best, the cream of the crop, top of the top.
Well, I mean, you got tip of the spear, you got SEALs, Delta Force, or whatever, and then you got your everyday soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, but you've got to still maintain certain standards throughout that strata.
Did the captain get honorably discharged, or did he just?
Of course, he got honorably discharged.
But he didn't get moved to a civilian or like a non-combat role. He was just actually discharged from the military.
Yeah, he ended up being discharged from the military because it wasn't treatable.
Wow.
But he couldn't be in the
doesn't...
combat zone. And when you talk about what Tucker was bringing up about the pregnant soldiers in 1995, when I was stationed in Korea, I was up on DMZ, and it was called Area 1. And in Area 1, before females got shipped up there, they had to take a pregnancy test. Because why? You could not be sent into Area 1 with pregnancy test because we were the tip of the spear. You were in a deployed zone. Now, guess what will happen? Sometimes, little boy soldiers and little girl soldiers, they do little things, and the next thing you know, you get a pregnant female soldier. But you know what the Army would not allow us to do? We couldn't redeploy that soldier back. Even though now that she's pregnant, she's non-deployable. She cannot wear a gas mask because that can affect her. She cannot. Wow. So she has to stay up in Area 1 for X amount of time. And then I think in the 5th or 6th month, then you could,
What would the Chinese do in that situation?
Well, the Chinese, I don't think, deal with that.
Do they even have female soldiers?
I think they do have female soldiers, but I don't think they're in their frontline troops.
Yeah, I think they're much more bigoted, I think the left would call them.
Well, as a matter of fact, I read an article recent where the Chinese were talking about they need to have non-feminization training for males. Masculinity training. I mean, they are looking at what is happening in the West, and they're saying, we don't want that.
You know what? The advantage they have over us is actually the biggest detriment that their people suffer is the authoritarianism.
Absolutely,
it's an advantage to
a point.
To a point, right? Yeah. I had a conversation with an anarchist friend of mine years ago where I said that it is much more efficient in many ways an authoritarian regime because they snap their fingers and they impose their will, where we deal with bureaucracy. Granted, it's a despicable way to live, full of atrocities.
And you and I were talking about this before we came on air. This is the downfall of an authoritarian regime. It restrains and restricts creativity.
Yep.
And we saw that, that was one of the things about our military as opposed to the Soviet model style, is that our young troops could make a decision. Our young troops were trained. When you think about, all of the wars, it's a sergeant here, it's a corporal there that is able to do something, whereby when you have that authoritative system, and that was the big problem we had in Afghanistan in training their army, was that even if they were in a firefight with the Taliban, they wouldn't take an action. And I said, well, what are you doing? Well, I have to wait for the call from my commander to do something. I said, they're shooting at you, okay? Take an action.
Yeah.
And that was something that they had to learn, but they grew up under that Soviet mentality. So
that's happening now.
It is happening now. So an authoritarian regime, like what you see taking place here, where it's telling you what you can wear, what you can eat, what you can think, what you can drive. It may sound, again, free does not equal freedom.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.